We'll call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting for August 21st, 2025. I will ask the roll call.
Baldwin.
Here.
Badger.
Here.
Clark. Not here. Gott.
Yes.
Boucher.
Present.
Marino.
Here.
Mance.
Here. You didn't hear from Joe, but if he doesn't show, I'm sure that's a good excuse. He's always here. Moving on to the next item is approval of the minutes. We had the minutes from the regular meeting, July 17th, 2025, as well as the minutes from the special meeting, July 30th, 2025. Did everyone have an opportunity to read both sets? Any comments or discussions?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting on July 17th and the special meeting on July 30th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Steve, you didn't approve the agenda.
Oh, I did skip that. I'm sorry. That's right in there. The agenda was in front of everyone. Any changes or revisions to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda for August 21st for the Planning Commission.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I see none. We've had the approval of the agenda as well as the approval of the minutes, which moves us to our first public comment section. In this section, if you would like to speak, you would just come up to the microphone, give us your name, address, limit your comments to 3 minutes and let us know what agenda item you're speaking to. If you're here because you're on the agenda, you'll be asked to speak during the time that your item comes up. Seeing no one in the room, is there anyone online that wants to speak? I don't see no hands, so we will close out the public comments and agenda items, which takes us then to new business. The first item underneath new business is the 405 Park Street, which is a public hearing and site plan review for a major waterfront construction. This one, as it is a public hearing, we'll go ahead and call the public hearing open. And I will ask for a summary by our city manager who's sitting in for our zoning administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, planning commissioners. It's good to be back with you and some new faces here since I was here last, but good to be here nonetheless. So the applicants, is the owner of 405 Park, is seeking retroactive approval of a major waterfront construction project. Essentially, they've installed some commercial floating docks in front of their property for their boat rental business. So our consulting planner has reviewed against the standards that are in the zoning ordinance and flagged a few particular pieces that were kind of missing to make an ultimate determination here. Ultimately, we need some details on the finger pier as far as its width to determine what length is essentially going to be allowable. And you'll see actually with you this evening, we have a recommendation in your packet, but we have a little bit of a supplemental recommendation that is at your seat, kind of in an email format, but you'll see it in kind of red. So depending on the width of the actual finger pier will be determinative of what kind of or what length of finger pier that they can have. So we need some further details on that from the applicant. The width of the docks, walking surface is not specified. The main dock extending from the shore and bulkhead must be at least 4 feet wide. Then the finger pier must be at least 3 feet wide. We need some more information on the dock's capacity. Required to have 100 pounds per square foot minimum. And then we also need some lighting information as it relates to the docks as well. So not sure if our consulting planner is online. I'm not sure if he has anything additional to add. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, I think we'd turn it over to the applicant who is here this evening to present their request.
David, you have anything else?
No additional comments.
And at that time, we will ask the applicant, which is Dan Cook, on behalf of Casa Loma, to come up.
Hello, appreciate your consideration of this application. And I can address each of the questions that has been presented. The dock section.
Start with name and address.
Oh, yeah, sorry about
I
that.
don't happen to know you.
Yeah, Dan Cook, myself and my wife Sue own 405 Park Street, where we operate Casa Loma Resort and Marina. We rent this particular section out to Unsalted Boat Rentals where they have the pontoon and small boat rental area. We've been utilizing a purpose-built commercial floating dock for some time under the belief that it was permissive as a temporary dock use. It's come to our attention that we needed to make this application. So we are. All of the dock section that we own is either 5 foot or 6.5 foot wide. They don't manufacture, this manufacturer, Wave Armor, doesn't make anything smaller than that. It's intended for commercial use. The dock, the 70-foot indicated section is that which is in place today. It is, I'm going to get correct on the weight bearing capacity. A question I have for you is at what buoyancy? I talked to the engineer at Wave Armor. They said that municipalities generally specify either 70, 80, or 90% buoyancy. 100% neutral buoyancy would be like a feather on top of the water. The 5-foot sections are 4,615 pounds, which makes them 92.3 pounds neutral buoyancy. But at 90%, they're 116 pounds. He said normally we see 78 or 80% at most municipalities, and I just didn't know what to tell him. So I think we're okay on the buoyancy side. I know we are on the width side.
And what did you say at 70 or 80% that he told you? the buoyancy is?
I didn't. I just asked him for the 90%, and that's 5,827 pounds. So that's 116 pounds per square foot. So if it went down 10% when it was fully loaded, that's the 90%. 90% would be above the water level, and it'd be 116 pounds. I just didn't know what you needed. The larger 6.5 foot section, wide sections, still only 10 foot long, are 7,615 pounds. So they far exceed the 100 pound per square foot at neutral buoyancy. Lighting is in 2 forms. These little hockey puck lights are mounted in the deck itself. I just grabbed this out before I came over, every 10 feet on each side of the deck. And then we will be installing at the end of each 10-foot section, a post that has solar lighting cap on it, like you see on the decks at Casa Loma. So you really have lighting on each side of all of the walkway every 5 feet. So that section that is 20 feet wide, we would intend to be 6.5 foot wide. That section that is 40 feet would also be 6.5 foot wide.
Yeah, so the 40-foot section would definitely exceed the 100.
It well exceed the 100 and way exceed the 4-foot width requirement. Yeah. The section that's 70, while it's 92.3 at neutral buoyancy, it's also anchored to the face dock. So it's not really going to sink anyways because we got a bracket on it against the wall. But at 90% buoyancy, that 70-foot section is still 116 pounds, but it has the benefit of being anchored.
I don't know if this is a question for you or for the city. Is the lighting requirement for people who are walking on the dock at night, or is it for boats who are passing at night?
According to the Coast Guard, there is no lighting requirement for the piers and docks. I don't have to have the docks lit at all. We do it partially because of the appearance. It looks nice and it's a safety feature, but we close at 9 p.m. every night. We don't operate after dark. So we open at 9 a.m. and we close at 9 p.m. So these are all solar and they're on the same basic time frame as all the deck lighting is and landscape lighting. But we just don't operate after dark.
I do rely on our city's memo, which had a recommendation that lighting information must be provided.
Yeah, but it's just if you look on page 11, underneath 7, when it talks about the 100 pounds per square foot, it says shall be located thereupon adequate lighting in areas available for public use in periods of darkness. So it was kind of subjective as to what the light, there's no lighting requirement, it just needs to be adequate that you would have, that we are satisfied that if there was darkness, people wouldn't fall off the docks, basically. But because it wasn't in there originally, that's why he noted that we did need to at least have that addressed. Now, a question for either Ryan or David, if he's online. Because they weren't in the original site plans, like the 6.5 foot wide and the lighting, do we still, would we actually make it subject to those approvals and have it administrative, like as soon as they deliver something that shows the 6.5 feet, or can we just say, okay, it's
I
6.5
printed the
feet?
brochures and put sticky notes on the sections we're using. I mean, I can give them to you, but I don't know what more I would bring you.
Yeah.
And you'll see it when we stick it in the ground. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just asking, like, because I didn't know, like, if we were moving forward, do we need to make it subject to the delivery of that, or was this sufficient?
Yeah, I think there's two things. Either he has the information to hand out and you've all viewed it and you find it sufficient and don't need it as a condition. Otherwise, you can make it a condition of your approval that they, submit that information and it's verified by staff or administratively verified by staff.
Thoughts?
The only open issue, the length of the finger pier.
Now, the finger pier, if it's 4 feet or more, there is no restriction on the length. It just can't go past whatever the maximum of their bulkhead space would be, which is either 45 and 100 is the maximum for anyone, but 45, I think, is what we determined would be for theirs. The original memo that you got, where we kind of overlooked the fact that we talked about if it's 4 feet or less, but since we didn't know what the width was, it may have been subject, but now that we know that the minimum that he would even have would be 5 feet, which is the one that's closer to the land, and then 6.5 feet out, and then that removes that 30-foot maximum. And so if we're all, I mean, when I looked at the photos, I was guessing it was probably more than the 4 feet, but at least now we know that it's 6.5.
And that's here in the specs on the brochure I brought in case you wanted it.
Does anyone want to see the brochure? Good.
I'm good.
Okay.
I thought he was, and I was understanding he was gonna submit it to our staff.
If we make it, if our motion, if there's a motion made that has this condition upon the approval of the submission, then it would be the staff that would sign off on it upon receiving it. Or if we're good, we don't have to have it as conditions in any motion.
And then just 2 through 4, right? Is that what we'd be looking
I
at?
mean,
Well, those
it'd be the same thing
things.
because he's got the bulkhead. So if we're comfortable with that, it does exceed the 100, then we wouldn't need to keep
Yeah,
that in there. The lighting, he's explained the lighting to us. So, it could be just removed, or we could leave those as conditions for.
I almost just for precedential value, remove lane information, because I think it's even questionable whether this is an area available for public use, since this is on private property, right? I don't know, we have one of the attorneys on, don't we? I don't think it matters. We don't need to raise a stink about it, but he has it, so it doesn't matter, but I don't even think he needs to have it, as you said.
You mean the approval for the major waterfront construction? Is that what you're asking about? If he needs that?
Yeah, just looking at the lane information and the number 7 on page 11 of the packet.
Yeah, so the requirement comes from the definition of major waterfront construction in the ordinance, and it just to be succinct, the definition mentions that it would apply to changes in conjunction with a commercial establishment. And I believe the applicant mentioned that there is public use of the docks. I think that's what he said. The lighting is for the public. And so that would be why they're subject to that.
I don't mind it. We're doing the lighting anyways.
Yeah, you have it, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, one other item that wanted to also bring to the planning commission's attention that we'll need some further information on. So the application materials indicate that the applicant, I think it says none as far as whether or not there's been any federal or state approvals of the dock. And I'm not sure if they need to approve or not, but your zoning ordinance requires that there be a statement as to whether the proposed construction has been approved or denied or acted upon by other state or federal agencies. So I would suggest that you at least have a condition related to that unless they're able to answer today or provide some sort of proof from Eagle or the Army Corps that they don't need.
If someone would have just asked me for some sort of proof on this issue, I would have brought that.
Okay.
I met with Eagle on another matter. I asked him on these floating docks whether I needed any sort of application to be made or anything, and he told me that I didn't. It doesn't seem to
You
add
were
that
here, what,
now.
a couple months
Just a
ago.
couple months ago.
And you had to get approval for
Yes,
this
for the
project
what?
overall.
Right.
That would probably
Would price it
cover it, yeah.
I'm not suggesting that you deny it because it's not here. I'm just
Right.
suggesting that it'd be.
It'd be a
condition
subject to
that's
administrative
addressed,
approval.
So.
Any other comments or discussions?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, maybe perhaps we kind of go through, see if there's any other comments that public might have on this one or.
Oh, it's a, or our open hearing, guys, because it's a public hearing, we have to give public commentary questions.
Okay, thanks the applicant.
Thank you.
At this time, then, we will open it up for public comments regarding this application. Again, if you would like to speak, just come up to the podium, give us your name, address, and then what your comments are. And if you're online, please raise your hand. At this time, we see no public comments, so we will close out the public comment section, which moves us to the commissioner deliberation. Think it, well, I've already asked the question. I keep getting ahead of myself here tonight. I'm just trying to move this thing along.
Yeah.
So if we don't have any additional deliberation, then we could actually ask for any commissioner action.
Sure.
Action would be.
Sure, I will, yeah, I'll make a motion, to approve the application, with the following contingencies. That the lighting information is provided for administrative approval and that the documentation of no Eagle requirement is provided to staff. I recommend to approve. I think you dealt with the width issue and the length issue already and the buoyancy issue.
Right.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and we have a second. Well, this will be a roll call vote.
Patrick,
Yes.
Paulman,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Boucher,
Yes.
Marino,
Yes.
and me.
Yes. Thank you, Diane and Sue.
Looks nice every time I go by. It keeps getting better. It's good.
And on the administrative, all you would have to do is bring in the documents for Ryan. Yeah. Perfect. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Which moves us to the next item of new business, item B, which is 204 Grand. Public hearing and site plan review for a rented accessory dwelling unit begins on page 29 in your kits. This also is a public hearing, so I will open up the public hearing for the 204 Grand, and I will ask for a summary by our city manager, who is sitting in for the zoning administrator.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is the owner of 204 Grand Street, which is in the city center transitional residential district. They're requesting retroactive approval, special land use approval to rent, to essentially owner occupy the single family dwelling and rent an existing attached accessory dwelling unit. Staff or consultant didn't flag any particular concerns with this request, but suggest you turn it over to the applicant to present any their requests and answer any questions.
Absolutely.
Is it possible to get more background, or are you, or was this mainly Luke dealing with it? I'm just kind of confused. Sure. This whole, cause I know you guys had an STR license, they're in R4, but then it's not able to be renewed, so now they're having to get an ADU license
Okay,
or?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide a little bit more background. So, so they applied to, they had a short-term rental certificate, and then we're gonna be coming on the short-term rental license.
Okay.
And the prior zoning administrator flagged the fact that their accessory dwelling unit needed a separate, they didn't have special land use approval in order to rent the accessory dwelling unit independently of the single-family dwelling. Which is what they asked, under their license. So, we took a look and essentially, a couple of zoning administrators ago, there was approval of the single family dwelling with the accessory dwelling unit. There also was a short-term rental certificate that was issued, but for some reason it wasn't flagged that it needed, special land use approval to be rented on its own. Obviously, we've cleaned up a lot of that language within our zoning ordinance and made that even more clear than it maybe necessarily was in the past. And so obviously today that's a clear requirement. They're obtaining the license and there's a requirement to obtain that special land use approval.
Makes sense. Sorry, it's a lot, you guys. Yeah. Okay.
This time with the,
I'm a little confused as to the district it's in, because it was a land split from the church, which is in R1. And just simply because it's split, then it automatically becomes R4.
Double check our zoning map, but I'm fairly certain.
On the zoning map, where it's like you can see the lower lot. It's
exactly,
technically an
because they
R4.
actually, the lower section, you come in.
Oh,
off of
you know,
Green.
I see the
Off of
light.
Mason.
First of all, I think it's a lousy map. Yeah. But. I mean, simply, so when it was part of the church lot, it was, and Bobby may know because being intimately involved with All Saints. So the church lot had 2 zoning districts.
I was not on planning at the time, so I was really not looking at zoning districts, but the location of the lot was Mason Street and not Grand.
Correct.
So it well could have fallen into a different district.
Okay, so when the church owned it,
Right.
it's, the address for that lot was Mason Street.
Was Mason Street.
Okay, that clears it up.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
It's added some confusion. That was. Okay,
It is-
sorry. Yeah.
Now.
the only reason I'm not even more confused is because
of
I at least had that knowledge, so, but it is. And thank you for providing the background, Ryan, because it was unclear when I read it, and I think my colleagues share that. It's like, was it the city or are Tracy and Jason asking for an exception? It was hard to tell from the descriptions of them.
Yeah, there's no exception.
And I had a similar conversation with them and their frustration maybe with like, wait, what the heck? It's been 3.
We're getting it cleaned up. So now we have a presentation by the applicant. If Tracy or Jason Myers, who are the owner of the properties, would like to come up.
Thanks for having us tonight, you guys. I'm Jason Myers. I do live at 204 Grand Street, and at that location, we did buy the lot from the church many years ago, and that actually was Mason Street is the actual address.
Right.
We chose to put 204 on the house because we needed a mailbox up on Grand. It was a lot easier than running down the hill and getting it down on Mason Street. But the actual ADU we're talking about actually is accessed from Mason Street, has 2 parking spots on Mason Street. And we have stairs that go up to that location of the house. And that house, that is the bottom, technically kind of the basement of our house, but it's above ground. So we have a 2-bedroom, 1.5, or basically 2-bath rental unit there. And we've been doing it for 3 years. We got approval from the city 3 years ago to do it. And then we found out when we came in to reapply that things had changed and we needed to come before you guys to ask to get it approved to re-rent it again going forward. And so here we are. And it's confusing to me too, because we thought we were approved and ready to go and had been for a long time. And so
Yeah.
here to ask for whatever forgiveness had to happen from what happened 3 years ago.
No, it's
And to get the right approvals on the books so we can continue to operate as we have been for the past 3 years.
For what it's worth, just on that point, I live 2 blocks from it, 345 Grand, so we're neighbors. It is absolutely not about you folks and your application, but this is such a delicate issue in the city that if there was any precedent being set, I want it as clear as possible that the reasons why, if we grant you an ADU, and that becomes a short-term rental, that there's nobody who can come and say, hey, well, you did it for them, so do it for us, without it being exactly by the way it needs to be done. That makes sense.
But we thank you. We thank you for a very, very complete kit too. So it was appreciated.
Yeah, we presented about as much stuff as I think we could in pictures
So
and
it's
layout.
lovely
and so-
pictures, yeah.
That's beautiful.
And it's been doing very well and she does a great job. My wife's the one that actually operates it and takes care of it and she's a super host and everybody loves that location. They love to walk to town from there and it's
I'm sure
always-
of it.
It's always full of people coming into town, so.
Great.
Right.
Any other questions for the applicant? If not, we'll say thank you and we'll move on to the public comments. At this time, if you have public comments in regards to 204 Grand Street property, please come up to the microphone or raise your hand online. I see no one in the room and no one online. We did have one correspondence from Julie McGuire, which was handed out to each of you. You know, it's basically talked about it being a very nice property, and she was raising some of the same questions about the R1 versus R4. I think that's been cleared up, that the original property was Mason R4. The ADU is accessed off of Mason, which is R4.
But just to make clear, it doesn't matter whether it's R1 or R4 for purposes of an ADU.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, that was it for the public comments. So we'll close out the public comments and it goes open to commissioner deliberation. I personally see this as pretty clean as far as the ADUs. I think it goes right back to some of those conversations we've had since we really have cleaned it up as to whether it should even require special land use, but
I'm in agreement. Think it should go forward. The only question that I want to bring up is why do we make them do a special land use for this approval? We've talked about it. It costs them $1,000 and we've never denied one. Why are we doing it?
but we have to put it on the docket to amend our ordinances. So right
I know,
now.
because it's still our ordinance. I'm just trying to put it out there for
In
future
reality,
work.
you know, for all of us to kind of consider, it's hard for us to make an amendment when when we have a submission from an applicant. So we need a time period where we don't have a submission. We
Absolutely.
can actually bring it up,
Yeah, no,
but it is on the agenda.
Okay, good.
With that, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the special land use request to allow the rental of the attached lower level ADU at 204 Grand Street based on compliance with ADU rental requirements of section 154.092J, satisfaction of site plan approval standards, section 151.060, and positive findings related to the special land use standards of approval in section 154.080 that are documented in the staff memo dated August 15, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion that's been seconded. I will ask them for the roll call.
Patrick,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes,
Lachey,
Yes.
Marino,
Yes.
and Mans.
Yes. It's now official. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep it busy.
Everything.
It is beautiful. All right, it concludes which takes us now to the third item under new business, which is 615 Park Street, which is a site plan review.
Yeah.
For the property that's located within the Resort District C4. At this time, I'll ask before we actually have the applicant speak, I'll just ask for Ryan once again to kind of just give us an update as to what brings us in front of us.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chair, and I'm probably gonna teamwork this with our consulting planner and legal counsel, who's virtual. In case I miss anything here and kind of laying this out for you this evening. So this request, the memo was that's in your packet was supplemented today by our consulting planner. So just before the meeting, I was able to get a chance to email that out to all of you, but a copy of that is at your chair, and then we have it it's available to put on the screen as well and kind of walk through it with you. So 615 Park last year received zoning approval to make some improvements to the property. That, as some of you may know, several years ago, the property was flooded during high waters. They went through a pretty significant journey as far as figuring out funding and plans to make some improvements, including some helical piers being added to the property to deal with some structural concerns. The proposal or the plans that were approved last year essentially didn't involve any changes to the footprint, so the non-conforming structure within that zoning district. They received their approvals. As time went on, or since that time, they've essentially looked to make a change to their dock. Instead of having it be a wood dock, that's replaced. They'd like to make the dock a concrete dock. In addition, unit 12 of the condominium, the foundation was poured or has been poured already. It has been poured in a kind of a square configuration, which differed from the original plans that were approved. And so several months ago, a stop work order was issued by the previous zoning administrator because he became aware that there was a concrete dock that was going to be constructed instead of wood. And then there was also concern with the foundation with unit 12 not being compliant with the plans that were already approved. Since that time, we've received a site plan application with a very clear request to change the dock to concrete instead of wood. It's a bit unclear from the application whether or not the condo association is asking for a change to the foundation of unit 12. That's something that we would suggest that you get clarity from them on today, as whether or not they're actually asking for that be change to their site plan. If so, there's also a question about whether or not the work to unit 12 is just impacting the common elements, or whether or not there may be some impact to the limited common elements. And if there is an impact to limited common elements, and there's a question about whether or not the unit owner has to eventually sign off or approve of that. And so you would ask for their clarification on whether or not it's their belief that it's just impacting the common elements, and only they, as an association, are the ones that have to apply and have approval to apply for the changes. If in fact they are asking for approval of unit 12 with the squared off foundation, we did some work this week with kind of overlaying the previously approved plans and the plans that were in the packet. And found that the foundation of unit 12 actually has a slight enlargement over what's there now. Right now, what was there? I shouldn't say what's there now. What was there before essentially was kind of a bowed foundation. By squaring it off, they're actually extending the foundation in kind of the red marked areas that you can see there on the screen and in your memo, which would be an expansion of a non-conforming structure, which the zoning ordinance doesn't allow for without a variance. So if in fact there's a change, or they're asking for a change to their plans that includes a square foundation, if you were to approve of their request, it will essentially have to be conditioned upon them receiving a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
There it is.
Like other applications with this, in this case, obviously, we're dealing with a floodplain here and work in a floodplain. We'd want verification from Eagle that there aren't any requirements to obtain floodplain permits through them. Trent or Dave, if it's all right, Mr. Chair, did I miss anything that you might want to add?
No, I think you covered all of it. I'll just underscore Ryan's sort of three points that we'd like clarification for from the applicant is clarification whether or not they are in fact seeking a change for the configuration of unit 12. As Ryan mentioned, the application wasn't super clear on that point, and so just some confirmation as to that, as well as Ryan mentioned the general common elements versus the limited common elements. Just for those of you who may not be aware, the condo is governed by a master deed. And as part of that master deed, the association has ownership of the general common elements. And then the individual unit owners would have ownership over the limited common elements. And so the purpose of that clarification is that this application is brought by the association. And so just some clarification as to The changes here would only impact the general common elements owned by the association. And then related to that, that nothing involving these changes would require the consent of the co-owner. Again, relating back to the general common elements versus limited common elements. So hopefully that clarification helps a little bit. I'm available if there's any questions that come up throughout.
Great, thanks, Trent. Good. At this time, I'll ask for the applicant to introduce yourself and tell us who all.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for getting us on the docket. My name is Dave Carroll. I'm currently the president of the condo association we're talking about. My wife and I have been owners there for just over 10 years, and I've been on the board since the flood in 2019 and of course 2020. And through this project, I've just been president for the last couple of years as the final permits were issued and construction got started. So been involved with more than I really bargained for. But anyway, as far I'm going to address the cement deck and how that progress changed, the details of the bump out. I think our legal counsel John Fitzpatrick will address after me. But so originally, as you know, the initial plans turned in had a wooden deck proposed. As the project kind of came up, our contractor, Mike DeYoung, who's here as well, came up with some really great ideas for future flood damage mitigation. One of the big ones was including a waterproof membrane under the floors and all the lower units that comes up the walls 2 feet, so that in case of a future flood, that's even more than the 2020 flood was height-wise. If we seal off the doors, we can stop water from getting into the units themselves. Since the initial flood, the board had looked at, and unfortunately too late, different flood remediation things, including water dams. I think the city probably employed some of those in 2019. They make a new flood control device, just like a big L-shaped thing where the water pressure itself holds the water back. But trying to get ahead of the flood, we were kind of caught off guard as an association, and found out right away that the first attempts with sandbags never worked on the wooden deck. The water just came right under the sandbag, so it was futile. Although we put quite a few of them down there to try and do something, but we learned a lot, we'd like to think. So anyway, I wrote this in a lot brighter light, and I didn't bring my reading glasses, so I've got to kind of back up a little bit. So anyway, as the progress was made on the contract, Mike DeYoung had the idea of changing from the wooden deck to a concrete deck, which was Michigan Township Services told them they thought it was a great idea because it's something we could use those water dams on in the future. We got the sign off from Michigan, or from Eagle. They approved the plans. We had a vote. There were 12 units in the condo association. 11 of the 12 voted in favor of the concrete deck. The only dissenting vote was a person who has actually lost their voting rights a couple of years ago due to our bylaws. We were rather shocked at the stop work order when that came in on the concrete deck itself. There was no intention by the association or by our contractor to ever work around the process here. So we have resubmitted an application with the concrete deck, and we're seeking your approval to move forward with that part of it at least, and finish this project up. I know that building's been an eyesore on the riverfront for way too long. It's been 6 years since the floods.
Any questions for him regarding the concrete deck versus the wood deck? I think that one seems pretty straightforward. Okay, can we address the issue that we have regarding the non-conforming? We did the change to the footprint regarding the triangle versus the, what I kind of call the bow out section on unit 12.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
John Fitzpatrick from Cunningham Dolman. Counsel to the association, both with respect to these matters and ongoing litigation with the owner of Unit 12. And a couple of issues on the concrete wooden deck first before I transition to the piers and footprint here. Just a minor correction. I think the decking, both before the flooding and then after the flooding, was both had concrete and then it had concrete in the initial iteration of plans. So really, the change that we're talking about is from the wood surface of that deck to make it uniformly concrete, not largely concrete with some wood aspects. So in that sense, the material change that we're talking about is not all that significant, or at least it wasn't deemed that significant in our view at the time. As Dave mentioned, the change to the concrete uniformity material selection is almost entirely for the purpose of improving the building's ability to withstand water and to avoid the kind of catastrophic issue that was experienced twice before with this building. And that is, I guess it's an aside, but the engineering and the construction that has been conducted with respect to this, waterfront property, that has been the dominant concern, both in mitigating water penetration and then in the event there is water penetration, being able to survive that type of incident and not have the same type of catastrophic result as was experienced before. That same motivation and purpose comes into play with the foundation that is being examined here. This foundation, I guess, to just discuss the genesis of how this mix-up came to be, right? The planning of this, what we've called the bump out of Unit 12, there was never a foundation at this part of the structure in its history prior to the pouring that occurred recently. What was there before was a simple slab. So I guess, lay people might consider that to be a foundation, but at least from Mr. DeYoung's perspective, and I would say from an inspector's perspective, it would not be considered a foundation. Had that unit been inspected way back when, it almost certainly would not have been approved for residential purposes. And there's a long history there that I don't need to belabor. Right? So what is present for the commission here is what the association actually believed was going to be tendered as part of the initial application in last year's site review submission. Okay. Because of a snafu between the architect and the unit owner and the association, there were a lot of plans being floated about. And that's the reason that the iteration was used to pour the current section of Unit 12 was followed. So I just want to be clear, there was no intention of circumventing the prior application, right? It was just a mistake. Now, understanding that there is a very minor difference in terms of the footprint, right? What we have now are, I don't know how many of you folks have seen this, or obviously you have a report, but it's basically a wall, right? And inside of that wall section, there's exposed ground, okay? And ultimately, that ground will be filled with the same part of the same concrete pour that would take place with the pouring for the decking. The idea is to have a single pour that covers the entire deck as well as the interior part of that unit, so that when water appears, assuming that natural history doesn't reverse itself over the next decade, there will be a frost wall, and the reinforced concrete that is there will be able to withstand water penetration. Now, there's no question that the location of those piers are slightly different than the location of the piers that were in the prior set of drawings that was approved. Namely, this equal section reflects that it's square in the middle of the wall, that center helical pier.
Right.
Where before there was a slight off center. And these two are slightly more forward because the angle corner, used to be angled at the most outward corners of that section, and so it's slightly forward. But to be absolutely clear, there can't be any colorable disagreement about these walls that will serve as the foundation for the superstructure above it are general common elements. These are not elements for which the unit owner is responsible.
Sure.
And we say that with confidence, not only because it's true, but because of the cost that has gone into this, right? The association approved this part, it's paid for it, and that is being allocated among the various unit owners for, as part of the association's section of the responsibility. Anything that the unit owner may want to do in terms of restructuring the walls or the window units or whatever may happen, that is entirely her prerogative to do because it sets a topic, right? So this pouring, while it may be disagreeable to the unit owner, will have no bearing whatsoever on the functional use of that part of her unit, okay? She can do whatever she likes with the architect, complete the plans, and I suppose I'll put one minor caveat on that. If she finishes this structure above the walls with an angle there would be a very small part of concrete that would be exposed to the elements, which when the section was there before, potted plant sat exposed on the concrete. That's something that could be rectified, that could be cut out for aesthetic purposes once the unit owner completes whatever construction she's going to do. Not our business, not our concern, right? The association just wants this completed so that when the concrete pour takes place, it can be done uniformly on both the decking and within the interior of these walls. And then we have a single pour, and that's has better integrity. It's cheaper to do it in a single pour and so on. So I think we have, obviously a little egg on our face here in that the plans that were followed on there nominal difference or marginal differences between the plans that were approved. To the extent the commission deems it appropriate to have conditions put on completion of this construction, or would like for us to pursue some type of variance, the association is ready and willing to do that. We'll take your instruction within reason to whatever degree you want us to change things. But the stop work order, we've been trying to kind of piecemeal that to at least let the construction of the boardwalk be completed so that it no longer is an eyesore and all the other residents can enjoy the property as it was intended. We can do it piecemeal if the commission is so inclined and would like us to even withdraw the aspect of the application relating to this bump out, we can do that. But our primary concern is getting the pour done before November so that the unit owners can enjoy the property and the eyesore can be eliminated. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions for it?
Other public comments or does it?
This is just a
Oh, it's just like me. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I appreciate the explanation that we heard from the applicants on units. Well, just for clarity's sake, are you asking for a change to the plans as it relates to unit 12? I guess would be my question for the applicant. Just a very clear, Mr. Weirll.
Right, it's just for the general. You're talking about.
Right, I understand his position, yes, that it's just the common elements, but are you actually formally requesting that the planning commission approve a change to the site plan related to unit 12 with the squared off foundation?
Based on our communications with advisors to the commission, it's our understanding that it is deemed to be a major change or a change that does require approval, and while we might take exception to that, we follow that lead and request approval of a change.
Okay. Yeah, because probably as it's been, communicated to you, and I know it's discussed. By having it squared off versus being kind of like an angular bump out, it does increase the area of nonconformity. And it's kind of clear if you look at the major waterfront ordinance, that if you increase the level of the extent of nonconformity area in any way underneath a major construction, then it's something that we would not be able to prove. It has to be approved by a variance through the Board of Appeals. That's been my understanding, and I know we got legal counsel on the phone and our consultant, if they want to also follow up with that.
Yep, I would agree with you, Mr. Chair. That's accurate. If you need more context to it, it's there's actually a helpful diagram in the city code. It would be in let's see, section 154.174 C, subsection C1, I believe. There's a diagram that sort of shows this exact thing. And I find that to be quite a helpful explanation of, even though we're not increasing into the setback area, to make it flush, it causes more of an encroachment into the setback, even though it's on that same line, which would require a variance by the ZBA.
Correct, and that's how we were discussing, because when I first looked at it, I said, well, wait, the measurement from a feet distance, the setback doesn't change. But it was the area of nonconformity that was being increased by having the piers out on the corner, which again, I think it makes sense as to why the piers, were put on the corners. And I'm sure that if you would have known this up front, maybe you would have moved them back, a few feet.
I don't know if I could clarify a little bit about this. I looked into some of the history back when that piece was purchased. Originally, the slab was simply a slab. Then it became a lean-to, like a shed for the association years and years ago. And that slab initially was poured square, exactly to the dimensions that we designed into this. So it was always square, and she had been able to, apparently sometimes she tore down the shed, which I'm assuming would not have had those angled walls. And she built out the unit, she put kind of like a bay window, the flat part all the way to the edge of the slab and angled in, but at one point it was a shed that, look up the entire flat. The slab was square in the beginning, but it's basically being rebuilt exactly as the slab was before. So I don't know if that.
It helps. I think the one thing that makes this challenging was that the original site plan, when it was submitted, had it with, the angled bump out as opposed to the square slab. So when it was first approved, so it is a change to a site plan that was originally approved. So if had this been approved, had this been the original site plan, then we would have had these issues back the first time it kind of came through. We probably would have already had it addressed. But that was one of the reasons why it comes to our attention.
So what I thought I heard him say is that this plan is not a increased nonconformity to what was there before. It is an increase to the previously approved plan,
Correct.
but not to the previous existing plan?
That's what,
I would say at this point, we haven't seen anything to show that there was something that was squared off there and that with those exact dimensions to say that there isn't an increase. We looked at the First Amendment to their master deed. There's not an actual survey or any sort of plans that are actually attached to that. Maybe they have a copy of that and maybe they could, provide something to show that there was actually some sort of foundation that was there before that actually matched those exact dimensions and that it remained there, wasn't removed at some point and then it's being added back. That would change the analysis, but I think given what we have,
the architect drew the plans of the existing walls and structures in the very beginning. Mike Dion has a picture actually of the old unit there with the concrete slab out. He mentioned there were planters on those little shooting concrete corners.
And those plans were, I believe, in the city's possession at some point. A request was made to receive those, and those were lost. The history is murky, no question. But I would just say as a factual assertion, it is not necessarily true that this is expanding the footprint of what historically was here. In fact, it's almost certainly true that this is how it was before, but we understand the history of the plans, and so to avoid trouble, we can.
No, I mean, it is interesting because when I went to the property initially, I found it hard to believe that the original foundation was in that shape. It was because knowing that building, it would make sense that you would just pour, because it's easier to pour a rectangle versus having boards and everything kind of doing all the cuts that were in its place. But then I was looking at the original site plan that was approved, and it had, that showing, and then of course, knowing the issues that we potentially were facing with the Unit 12 owner, it's like, well, that makes it something where we're really very closely looking and saying, we need to be careful on only approving something that we know doesn't go against any of our ordinances.
And my counsel, Mr. Randy Shipper, my colleague, he had regular communications with trying to determine what the prior version of this footprint looked like, and was told that the records were absent, so I
can add just a little bit more. Mike DeYoung said that Michigan Township Services, the original plans showed it square. How it wound up being drawn angled was we had all the architecture was done. The architect drew it square. The placement of the helical piers was drawn in there. It was intended to be square all along and exactly matched the footprint that was there before. And again, the architects measured that before the walls were taken out and all that stuff. So it's the exact same footprint. Now,
Mr. Chairman?
At the very end of the project, I need to get to the microphone. Very end of the project, like I said, we were getting the electrical drawings done for the permitting. So we told them the 4 downstairs owners, or the owners of the 4 downstairs units, meet with the architect, get your placement of your plugs and how you want things laid out. So when Unit 12 met with them, they made the changes and made it angled. They didn't offer to re-engineer it and pay for that part of it. They just decided they would like it angled. Those plans were what were finally approved, but they were never approved by the board. They were never intended by the board or the contractor who built that. So that's kind of how we wound up here on that.
So David and Trent, if this was originally a square rectangle or square foundation, and we're not increasing the level of nonconformity, would that remove?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I was right along the same thought process. I think we're hearing some new information. There's some history here that we weren't aware of. In the final recommendation in the report, one of the first bullet is to obtain a waterfront setback variance for the expansion of a non-conforming structure into the required 25-foot waterfront setback area. And then I may suggest we add on or demonstrate zoning compliance to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator, just so that we're not directing them to go to the ZBA for variance if it's determined that it's not necessary based on any new information. And just a side note too, and maybe Trent or Ryan could give their opinion on this too, but if we were only dealing with this issue alone, I think this would be a minor amendment to the site plan. So for me, this is something that if it's not necessarily something that the Planning Commission needs to provide a decision on if they don't want to request the Planning Commission's approval. The dock was certainly the main trigger point for the major site plan approval, which put this in your lap. But I think in either case, I think a motion, if you did approve it, if they were requesting the change, we could be a little bit more flexible with that condition so that if we do find that um, the original plan was square, poured in this exact same manner, we could make that call and not have to send them to the zoning board.
Yeah.
So they,
Oh, I was gonna say, Mr. Chair, I agree with Dave on that. I think based on the information we currently have, and I think the applicant alluded to this, you know, it is a change based on what we currently have, and it would require a variance. However, you know, this new information coming to light, I think if there is a way to find the original plans or if the applicant has them, I think that's a reasonable fix. You know, in the absence of, I agree with the point that I don't think we want to just direct them to the ZBA if it turns out to be unnecessary, but based on the current information we have and the city has, I think that is, you know, what my opinion would be as of now, based on the evidence we have, is that a variance would be necessary.
So in the recommended motion underneath the first bullet, when we end with the 25-foot waterfront setback area and documentation of the original square foundation submitted to city administrator.
I think Dave's suggestion was or demonstrate zoning compliance to the satisfaction of the
That
zoning.
bump out is actually in the master deed. Among other places, the bump is showing the rectangular bump out.
So I did see it in the bump out, but there, or I mean, I'm sorry, in the master deed, but there's no like dimensions and it's not that clear of a drawing. And then, you know, the approved site plan we have from the city's perspective is the one that has that sort of bowed angle. So that's kind of where we are. So I'm familiar with the master deed, but just given how that sort of survey drawing is set up and the lack of clarity, I don't know that it's clear.
So if we do the motion as a proposed motion as amended, suggested, and zoning compliance is not demonstrated to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator, then it would automatically bounce them to the ZBA, correct?
That'd be one of their options.
Yeah, the
Okay.
foundation.
I mean, we don't need that's an either, that's why or is there instead of, yeah, okay, great.
And Mr. Chair as well, I did include the second bullet and just want to make sure that Trent and Ryan are okay with that. But I did say that installation of the concrete dock is approved and allowable independently from the conditionally approved changes related to Unit 12. And the reason I wrote that in there, I was thinking that, you know, if they did have to go get a variance for Unit 12, any changes around that they could move forward with the dock independently from the rest of the consideration, just for timing purposes and just to be a little bit accommodating to the you know the seasonal pressure of getting that dock in.
Correct.
Yeah, and I guess just for today's purpose, I've we've given that some thought, and assuming the planning commission says yes, you're good with the concrete dock, would modify the stop work order to at least allow that work to occur, still remaining in effect related to Unit 12 until we, you know, sort that out, but at least they'd be able to move forward with the concrete dock if they wanted to not wait for the Unit 12 piece to be sorted out.
Okay. Other questions? What's that? This is a site plan, so we don't really have a public hearing on this.
Oh,
It's just a typical site plan. By us.
excuse me. Okay. We ready for a motion?
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. If there's no
Thank you.
further-
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the site plan amendment, including the concrete dock and a change in the shape and configuration of the foundation supporting Unit 12 with the following conditions. The change to the shape and configuration of the foundation supporting Unit 12 is contingent upon the applicant obtaining a waterfront setback variance for the expansion of a non-conforming structure into the required 25-foot waterfront setback area or demonstrating zoning compliance to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator. Point two, condition two, installation of a concrete dock is approved and allowable independently from the conditionally approved changes related to unit 12. And condition three, all changes are subject to approval by all applicable city departments and Eagle.
Second,
We have a motion that has been made and seconded. We'll then ask for roll call vote.
Patrick,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dunn,
yes.
Rashay.
Yes.
Mariner,
Yes.
and Mans.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no, and again, you can talk with Ryan because we are currently in between as a city administrator as to what documentation, but if you've got stuff with the deed or the original architect or somehow bring that in, great. Because I know you want to do the whole thing all at once as opposed to.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. All right, that concludes our new business for this evening, which takes us on to the old business. And we made each of these topics somewhat open-ended general with some goals in place. The first one is the master plan discussion. And in our kit, I know we've got a memo from David that kind of talks about the open house ideas. Prior to that, I think I just wanted to kind of touch upon the survey and update everyone. You know, the survey, after we had approved it at our last special meeting, we were asked, and not really, they didn't have to approve it, but Ryan and I both thought the council had asked if they could review. So they took it to one of the workshops. They all kind of reviewed it. Like us, their number one, concern was the length of it, and they were concerned it may affect the number of people that complete it. But I know I spoke and we felt very comfortable that if we promote it right, we'll still get the turnout, and that we already had kind of looked at it and condensed it. And so, not that they had to give us their approval, but when the meeting when the workshop was over, they were all very comfortable with us moving forward with it. So now what we need is obviously to issue the survey. And I was talking with Ryan and David today, we need to come up with, when's that going to occur? And I guess that became a question of, is that something that we need to dictate, Ryan, or is that something that you and David will kind of determine when it goes out? And then it was a question in my mind, like, okay, when it goes, is there like a cover letter, who's going to write the cover letter and what needs to be in the cover letter to kind of encourage people, to complete the survey? And then how are we going to promote it? Are we going to do an ad like in the commercial record with a QR code? Are we going to distribute, somebody had suggested, distributing flyers for restaurants or stores with the QR code on it, that maybe they can get them to put it in their windows and try to encourage people to, take it. Obviously social media, all the Facebook pages and our own website. So it's just kind of the ideas of how we would try to promote the survey. And if we had anything here today, but since it is the 21st of August and we are talking about potentially having an open house at the end of September, I think it's imperative that we try to get the survey out before the end of the month if possible. Thoughts from?
That would give it out for a month before our planned open house. I think that's good to have it out by the end of this month.
Any other thoughts on how we would try to solicit? I mean, it's try to cover all the ones I could think of.
I like the email blast and the commercial record to add as being what I've seen successful in the past. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And Mr. Chair, I know, part of the planning process kind of involves a more formal notice of intent to plan as well. And so I know Mr. Dave's working on preparing that. And if that were ready, maybe by Monday at noon, we could get that in Thursday's paper. And then probably at the end of next week, assuming it works with Dave's schedule, I think we'd be able to start kind of getting that out via email, at least social media. Or Dave's folks have that in their wheelhouse, or if the city needs to put together some sort of flyer, we certainly can do that as well. Any of you want to help take anything to any of our businesses to help get them to post things, we'd welcome that help, but otherwise we'll work it out.
Sure.
I understand from Dave that one of the suggestions may be like a mailer or something like that too. We did that with the short-term rental survey, at least send it to property owners within the city. We can look at doing that, kind of a small postcard with a QR code on it. But yeah, we can also do an ad in the paper too. It's not a problem.
Will we know, we being the city, not me, which individuals have submitted the survey?
I don't believe it's set up. I think it's just set up to be,
The reason I'm thinking, the reason I was thinking of that is we could have a contest. You submit the survey and you're entered in a contest to win
That too.
something. I don't know.
I didn't know if it was legal. That's what I was gonna.
Well, that was part two. But
Basically a raffle, probably need a gaming license, so.
But then we don't, thing is, I didn't know how we would have proof that they actually completed it, because we're not asking for their information and.
Take a
it's
screenshot
just
of
that
you
I just-
submitting it. Just
just
the
spit
page
all-
that you get when you submit it, take a screenshot of it. I don't know.
it was just spitballing,
Yeah.
but you know, yeah, okay. We've never done it before with
No.
any of our surveys, but I just wondered.
No, I like the idea because I think someone else told me that one. And I was trying to figure out how it would be done, but I never thought about what AJ just said. Like if you had something at the end, you could like capture it with your phone and then you would post it to our website or on our social media. And it enters you into, I don't,
I can hear Russ Gardner saying, but what about our residents don't have internet?
or again, I don't know, can you, as part of a plan, David, have you ever had anything like that? Because I don't know why it wouldn't be allowed, but at the same time, I don't know all the rules regarding what you can do as far as a survey for a master plan.
I haven't done it personally, but I can reach out to a couple colleagues and see if they've done anything creative like that.
Okay, that'd be good.
As
And
far as
I think part of the reason with the survey being delayed a little bit, I wanted to have this conversation first about the public outreach, because I think the postcards and the newsletters and the poster, and even if we want to do yard signs or anything, I think that they go hand in hand, the survey and the public event notice. So I think a lot of these materials can have both the date of the September 30th open house, as well as the QR code, project website and so on. So we can kind of have that all at once and get that out, by the end of the month here. And then that gives us, a good 30 days or so for people to, get the word out and share it and hope and get a good attendance.
And riffing off my last comment there, seriously, will there be paper copies of the survey available at City Hall, for example, that someone could walk in and say, I need a physical paper copy to?
Yep, we did that with the short-term rental survey. We did have some folks handle it in that way. And so it's a little, we take it back and then a staff member has to actually go and then input it into the system. So that way it's aggregating with the rest of it. But yeah, we're willing to do that. No problem.
Okay.
then whoever turns that in, clerk can mark off their name that they should add for the.
in the wrapping.
Convention, yeah, I like. So then everyone will be appeased.
David, and you also made a reference to it. You were saying there's some document that you need to prepare that has to be published about the intent to plan? So I guess we should have had that out, or is it okay to do it now?
It's yes, they're really one of the first steps in the master planning process, and this goes back to one of the earlier memos this year, which mapped out all the steps from the Planning Enabling Act. It's an intent to plan letter, so that we just need to inform our adjacent communities as well as public utility companies. There's a laundry list of agencies that we need to inform that we are beginning a master planning process. And what that does is it gets them, invites them to participate later in the process, and then it informs them that they'll have a period of 42 to 63 days to review the master plan, the new master plan or the update later in the process. And then it'll direct them to the website or wherever we might have the plan available. So it's really just kind of in the spirit of regional cooperation with our neighbors as well as agencies beyond neighboring communities. But yes, that is something that we should get out before we formally begin things like going live on the survey and having the open house.
Yeah. So the public notice for the intent to plan, as long as that's out first, there's no time frame as to how long afterwards we can send the survey out. So like, let's say we got the intent to plan out next week, the survey can go out the same time, or does it have to be so many days in between?
We just need to get the intent letter out as soon as we can, and I wouldn't worry about the timing so much as long as we just make it a priority to get the letter out that we are beginning the process.
Okay. And that's a letter that you would create?
Yeah, it's a paragraph. It's have a numerous templates, so it's just a kind of an FYI type letter, and I could give Ryan the list of agencies that we need to inform.
And do we send that hard copy or email or public notice?
It's just a hard copy letter that we would send.
I think we're all in agreement. We'd like to have the survey out by the end of the month.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. All right, and then David put together a memo that's in our packet, starting on page 77, which just has some ideas for the open house. And David, I want to thank you for bringing some of the ideas. I thought some of the stations were very creative, and I could see them kind of working right along with the survey itself. And so everyone have an opportunity to kind of look through those and any comments in regards to this as we're moving forward with ideas.
And real quick, Mr. Chairman, as we said in the past, the idea here is a general drop-in event with several stations on a variety of topics. There would be mapping exercises as well as like quick response boards where people can give their opinions on certain topics, and kind of like quick reaction type exercises. So we're looking for your input on the overall concept of the open house as well as the overall flow of the event. The general objective of this, I just kind of looking at this. I think the objectives are to inform, and I think that's not only to inform the participants of the planning process and the importance of their involvement, but also to inform us of things that don't always come up in meetings or hear perspectives that from folks we haven't met before. So it's to inform, it's to involve the public, and then just to get a general excitement as well about the process. And so with this, we start out with a welcome station, and that would be something to where myself, maybe the new planning director, would have the welcome board kind of explain the purpose of a master plan, why it's needed, and then kind of explain the overall flow of the event. We'd have a sign-in sheet. We'd have a QR code for the survey, which I believe we were saying the survey should be open for another week or two after the event, just so we can capture those folks who were participants at the event. And then we could also do sign-in sheets for continued engagement. We had talked about possibly having themed roundtable discussions or even individual interviews with folks. So we can have sign-up sheets for further participation, as well as sign up just to get project updates over the next few months. And then we go through a series of stations. So we kind of set the stations up around the room. It'd be helpful if all planning commission members could be there, and each member staff one of the stations. But do you want me to go through all the stations, or just see if you have comments on them, or?
I think we can hit each one real quick, just as far as if we like the idea.
Yep. So the first, obviously the first one's the welcome. Station 2 is a quick feedback wall, and that's where it would prompt someone by saying, it would say in Saugatuck, and you had maybe one column that says I love, I want more of, I want less of, and so they would take a Post-it note or draw on or write on the board. And it's kind of a quick response. I love the waterfronts. I want more of, I want more events, things like that. So we can get quick reactions of what are the top priorities on their mind based on those, 3 prompts. The next one is, I'm sorry, any comments on that one as that's almost like an icebreaker one as well. It just kind of gets people thinking. It's not real hard, and it's probably a good one to have right at the beginning.
I like that one. I think it's great to have it at the beginning myself.
Yeah,
Heads are saying yes. Okay.
Okay. The number 3 there, station 3, is kind of a priority type station. And there's two ideas here. They had, one could just be a list of priorities. So, we have a list of priorities toward the end of the survey, which is, overall city priorities. It could be something similar to where they have 3 dots and they're voting with those 3 dots. It's, similar exercise to the survey. It's kind, it's a little bit redundant, but it just gets people thinking, and we can have those conversations with the station manager, as why they're putting their dot where, and then they might give some other information or thoughts as they're doing that. You could do something a little bit more, creative or fun. You could do something with like Saugatuck Bucks, and you could give them like a fixed budget, which could be, play money or tickets or something like that, and they would invest those into certain things like, roads, streets, parks, pathways, redevelopment, and waterfront improvements, public facilities. So that could be something to where they're just thinking about how they would, if they were in charge of the purse strings, how would they, invest, public funds into these types of projects. So, again, that could be one station, or we could divide that up to 2 stations. Any thoughts on that?
I like that one. I like the casino chips are gonna push it all into one thing is where I'm at with it.
And I guess what I was wondering on that one, David, would be, we would somehow have to give them some type of guidance as to how costly each of the events are, because and what we don't know is, depending upon the extent of work on roads and streets, is that the most expensive one, or is it, pathways and sidewalks? Because I'm thinking to myself, it's like, if you gave them, okay, you have this budget, how would you spend it? Well, if we, let's say that they had one project that was going to be $1 million, and you had other projects that were 300,000. So are you going to spend your whole million on the one, or you want to spend 300,000 on 3 different ones? But I don't know how I would kind of judge. And then I was thinking, well, if you had one dot that would represent, if you only want to do one, and then you kind of give it an estimated value, and then you had a green dot that meant it was at a value up to like 300, you could do up to 3, or you could have something lower and you could have like place 5 dots or something.
I think it'd be hard to get to the actual budget relationship. That's why more, when you said priority, I said, okay, yeah, I only want to do parks, and I took my whole budget of that I'm allotted as my person that came in and visited. I want it all into that.
Right.
Or, you know what, I have 3 of these, so a third, or could do some priority use of their.
And then if you go with just the dots, like that's like he was saying, if you just give somebody 3 dots, there's nothing that stops it from putting all 3 dots on one line.
That's where
Which
I'm
is
at.
kind of the same thing too.
Yeah,
So
that's sort of
I mean, I
what,
like the idea, because I always say it's great for people to say that they want these things, but then it becomes a question of how you're going to pay for it.
no.
And so when you start asking people how they're going to pay for it, then all of a sudden their priorities may change. But that becomes very challenging when you're doing the master plan to try to like say, yeah, everybody says roads are the most important until we tell them that it's $18 million. And that's how much for the property tax are going to go up. And they're like, well, it's not that important.
You're true. The township did that for some of their Blue Star Highway planning, and they had buckets like this, and they had different buckets of, improvements along Blue Star, and folks decide, how they wanted to spend those dollars. You can't always have it all, right?
Yeah. So I like the idea if we can come up with a way to make the allocation of it work, because it's really,
How did the township do it?
that I don't, I have to find out.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was there and I did it. I don't remember if they had values assigned to each item, or if they just kind of let you use $100 in bucks and decide,
Just priority.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that the township did that, but I can check with Lene Wells or Progressive. I think they may have put that together, but we can see what they did and get some other ideas. But yeah, I think overall it's not it's to get just kind of a general reaction, just give people get them thinking about, yeah, if I put one here, I can't pay for that. And less of the, actually crunching the financial numbers, but just having them think in that mindset. And that also, and it also just kind of, it helps them to prioritize as well. And that's probably more of the importance than actually the financial aspect to it. Just making it more fun with their, their Saugatuck Bucks or their casino chips or whatever it may be.
Because, yeah, and I agree with David's last point, because I don't think the purpose of the master plan is to put a price tag on everything that's going to be in the master plan.
No, it wasn't put a
It's
price
not
tag.
pie in the sky, but those are ideas that are later to be fleshed out in more particulars by the city council and city planners and but this is a master plan. It's not, what do you want our city council to spend money on the next year?
Right.
Right. But what I was trying to say is like, if you had a valuation, if we know that streets are 10 times more expensive than park to redevelopment, then you have, you could put some kind of ratio in there. If they could put all their money, in this, or they could split it up. The same amount of money would cover 2 or 3 other priorities. How would they do it? So there is a way you possibly could give them just some generalities, not saying a budget, but, and just be curious to see if it changes, if they thought about it in a ratio of how the dollars could be spent.
Yeah, we can look into a little bit more. We can, if there's a way to make it a little bit more creative and I'll reach out to some colleagues and see how they did in the township as well as some other communities.
Great. Station 4.
Okay, 4 then is preserve, enhance, transform, and this is typically they call this a pet exercise. Preserve, enhance, transform, and so we'd have a large city map with aerial photography. The P is preserve. It's basically areas you want to keep as is. This is, do not touch it, do not redevelopment, keep it natural, keep it historic, whatever it might be. You want to keep it as is. Enhance are you put your, what we'd probably have is kind of a transparent dots with different shades, probably, red, yellow, and green or something like that. Enhance within some places where you can make improvements, modest improvements, expansions, but not, you're still trying to maintain the same character, but just try to improve things. It could be an area that's aging a bit that just needs a facade improvements or something like that, or a park that just needs a little bit of TLC. Then transform is going to be your major redevelopment. It's a building that has it would be a great opportunity to tear down and rebuild, or a parking lot that's would be much better suited as a park or a new building. So it's kind of the 3 different levels of how you want the city to look in different areas based on preserve, enhancing with improvements, or completely transforming. And it's always a good exercise because people will identify certain properties and they'll say why this is special to them, or what improvements would be, help out, or hey, I got this great idea for this parcel that has never been developed. So those types of conversations would result. And in the end, you might just have a map with a bunch of dots all over it. Looks like chicken pox, but the person at that station would be able to record those stories and those ideas as folks are expressing those comments. And we could also do it to where you put your dot there, and then maybe there's like a smaller sticky flag that you kind of write a quick note on it and put it on the map as well. A lot of times I try to be flexible in these events because and I have a whole bag full of dots and flags and post-its, because sometimes things change and you have to be nimble and find out what works best to put information on the boards. But in any case, the station manager should have a notebook and be able to jot down ideas as they hear them.
No, I like that one. What else? 5, mobility.
Yeah, 5. So this one would be a general base map of the city with as much as we could get for any sort of road and sidewalk information. And this would be mainly streets, sidewalks, and pathways, and we want to identify areas that this particular intersection is unsafe. I think we need a better striped sidewalk, or we need a crosswalk signal here, or here's a great spot that's missing a segment of sidewalk that would connect 2 segments. So those are the types of things where people can really look at their neighborhood or look at the route that they usually walk or bike and say, hey, there's always been this problem when I'm trying to get from A to B, and they'd be able to put that comment on a flag or a dot, and that's so the whole station is related to mobility and connectivity. Mainly bike and pedestrian, but we're certainly going to talk about car travel as well.
Okay. And then you had station 6.
Yep. So 6, in this one, this of any of them, this one may be probably the least important in my mind, but because you kind of address some of these things elsewhere, but the a positive and negatives map. So what do they value most, and then areas that there could be issues or negatives. Some of this could be picked up by the other stations in a way.
Station 4.
Station 4.
Yeah.
That's where I got
Yeah. Yep. So it just may not be necessary because and even a little bit of station 2, the quick feedback wall. So
Yeah, when I was looking at it, my first thought was 6 kind of overlapped. I'm also concerned about having 7 stations. Again, you were talking about we'd like to have every planning commissioner there who can kind of man a station. But the reality is we may have schedules, somebody may be on vacations. So I'd feel more comfortable if we had 5 or 6 stations versus 7 or 8. So I think this was an easy one that we can probably pick up in other stations myself.
yep.
Physical space, we're doing this here, right?
Or else we might try to get the high school.
Oh, okay. Well, that gives us a lot more space, but
That's actually a really good point. I wanted to confirm location too, because we're gonna get those notices out pretty quickly. So Ryan and I will chat about that soon, just to make sure that we have the right location.
I don't know, what is the process? Do we just ask if you can? I mean, I know that the high school has to approve, but we've done some of our meetings there, and that lobby space that they have is large enough that you can. It's probably not the only place I can think of that's really large enough that you could have 5, 6, 7 different stations.
Yeah, there's some lower level space at the SCA too that could be a possibility, but yeah, I can reach out to the
Oh, that's
school
true.
and
I
see
think
if it's available to use kind of that atrium area, and there's a form that I have to fill out. And get filled out, so.
Okay.
And one thing too, just in terms of the crowd, in our materials, we'll be very clear that it's a drop-in event and that there's no formal presentation, and that please feel free to stop by anytime between, I think we said 4:30 and 7.
Right.
And I made the mistake once of not saying that, and all 120 people showed up at the same time. So I'm being very clear that this is a come at your leisure. No need to get there right at the opening.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good sign.
And then getting into 7, then I thought maybe the community character and small town feel could be a good one, because we did talk about that quite a bit during the survey planning. And this could be something to where maybe it's like a visual preference type board where we have different images that people could choose what best reflects small town character. Or maybe it's just something a little bit more simple, that they're writing write a statement on a post-it and stick it on the board. So we can see how creative we can get with that. But is something about community character and small town feel, is that something that you think is worthwhile?
I think we should, because I think that's one of the things we consistently hear, as commissioners, is kind of maintaining that. And I can tell you from when we were doing the waterfront, the photos probably generated the most response because people could visually see it. It was very easy for them to say, oh yeah, that, I like that, and that's what we should have. Oh, I don't care for that. And then if you had little post-it notes besides, let them, where they could tell you why they don't like it, But so for me, I thought that, just from my experience, I thought the photos worked as opposed to having them write something out.
and I thought we had a lot of the survey items that fall into this world. If you were to leave, why would you type things, and those would fall into this type of section, I think.
Yeah, and this could also be something to where if we have pictures, we can also have like an 11 by 17 worksheet or something where, we have all the pictures on one sheet, and there's similar to when we did this visual preference exercise for waterfront. They I think they checked yes or no, or prefer or not prefer, and we could do something similar to that. But we can think about that a bit more, and either do photos or something more general. But I think the photos would be a good idea. And then just to finish up a general comment board, I always like to end it with that. So just, and that doesn't necessarily have to be managed. We can just have that toward the end. So, as people make their way around the room and there's something that they didn't say, they can, or if they want to congratulate us on a great effort, they can put it up on the board there.
I'll wait and see that happen. No, I think that's good. If we get it down to like those 6 or 7 stations, then it makes it manageable for the commission, especially with the welcome station being one of them, which is primarily kind of like staff. So that'd be great. Any other ideas or suggestions from? Okay.
I say this semi tongue in cheek. I think caffeinated drinks and sugared treats should be supplied.
Oh,
If you think half an hour to fill out a survey is taxing, going through 7 stations, gonna take a while.
yeah, I would say that when the bike trail did their open house, they had sodas and waters and like little snacks that you could take and walk around with it, or, take it with you at the end.
Sugar.
So it's
Sugar and caffeine.
a good idea.
Rely upon Sarah to remember, but yes.
Say what?
So I'll rely upon Sarah to remember that and help Grayson remember that. But yeah, that
Yeah.
It will go into our minutes, I'm sure.
Gotta be there too. We'll make sure.
I'll
Grayson
leave it up
watches
to
this
staff
video.
discretion to specify which sugared snacks and which
That's good.
caffeinated drinks will be provided.
We'll get your favorite request, I'm sure.
I don't care.
No, David, I think that's really good.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, my thought then too was to start roughing out the boards. I can put together the templates. I'll have to coordinate that with the mapping, and so I may need to chat with Ryan a little bit about a contact from the county for aerials or to see where those might be available. But just need to coordinate a little bit on the GIS information. Grayson may even be able to help a bit, or I can contract it out as well. But I can probably have most of the boards roughed out in our ideas, by the next meeting. And then, really from there, I could get everything printed probably toward the end of the week of the 22nd of September. It should be no problem at all, because even if there's comments on the 18th at the meeting on the 18th of September, I can make changes to those boards, fairly easily.
Okay. Yeah, because with our meeting being on the 18th, and then we're talking about the open house on the 30th, so that gives us like 12 days in between.
Yep, I can still make changes, and then even if we need to coordinate a little bit that next week, or have a special meeting, I probably won't need to, but worst case, we can coordinate a little bit, even as a smaller group, to finalize the boards.
Perfect. So in our packet, we would just kind of have like screenshots what the boards would look like, or the packet for September's meeting.
Yeah, I would probably just export them all into a PDF, and then you just have an image of each board.
Perfect.
So, yep.
Great, which moves us on to our last old business item, item B, the commercial zoning district discussions. And then once again, thank you to David, who's put the memo together in our kit starting on page 80 on the proposed C3 Water Street Commercial District, which would be the combination of Water Street East and North. David, did you have comments you want to walk us through on this? I mean, I know everybody's had a chance to read it, but anything that you would like to?
Sure. Yeah, so nothing incredibly new in this report, just a couple of minor revisions. But as you recall from a couple of months ago, we had talked about we assessed all of our commercial districts, and then we made comparisons between the primary 4 downtown districts, and we determined that it may be appropriate to combine C1 Water Street North as well as C2 Water Street East into a single district, which tentatively named C3 Water Street Commercial. The other idea was that we still have Water Street South then that remains on the map. Most of Water Street South was absorbed into the Waterfront Preservation District. And so that would be kind of a concurrent effort or maybe a following effort to where that may be more appropriate for C1 City Center. But so with this combined district, really the primary components of establishing a new district is to name it, come up with a strong intent statement, determine the appropriate dimensional requirements, and then to set the land use regulation. So the dimensional requirements on the second page of that memo was really kind of a combination of the two, and it's much more simplified than the previous version. So we had different kind of variations to the dimensional requirements based on land use. So there were certain things that required maybe like I think it was like 8,000 or so square feet, or 120 or 130 feet of lot width. And the conversation at that time was that the property itself will dictate what type of larger scale use could be there. If someone could fit a hotel on 4,356 square feet, well, they can design it and it's a fit. If they need more room, they'll have to assemble more land or find a different community. So ultimately, we felt that these were appropriate minimum requirements, and then the uses themselves would dictate how much land they really need, if it's going to be more than 4,356 square feet. And then from there, we had talked in the past about all the various land uses. Some of the definitions you'll see are existing, some are new because they either need to be revised or just we need a new definition. And the table here is obviously, this is not how it's going to look in the ordinance itself, but I just for the sake of kind of categorizing things, the type is kind of a major category. So like accessory uses, and the next page is accommodations, hospitality, public and semi-public, residential. So those are like the more broader type categories, and then you get into the named land uses, which obviously are more specific. And we are getting away from some of the older terminology that in the current code and replacing them. Some of them we're generalizing some of the uses too. So we had some very specific types of retail or very specific types of office uses. Like I think the one that sticks out is like the domestic business or business domestic repairs or some strange one, in my opinion, that could just be consolidated down into one of these other districts, like the general offices, which has a number of business services, support services, financial, medical, personal. So there's an overall cleanup of the land uses as well. But then the exercise would be to go through and just confirm whether or not you think uses should be permitted, not permitted, or categorized as special. And I did go through that, and I try to generally stay within the spirit of our current districts. And the ones that could be a little bit more concerning, those are the ones that or that could have an impact on neighboring property. Those are the ones that you should typically classify as special.
I have a quick question on that. It says one of them, the dwellings, and I thought you did, but I'm not sure why the mixed use ground floor is not permitted. But I see the other options so I'm trying to understand the philosophy behind that, or is that matching what we had there previously? Page 84, middle of the page.
So it was the dwelling mixed use upper floors.
Yeah, upper floors is permitted. And then we have dwellings for residential up above is permitted, but the ground floor mixed use is not permitted. And I know we didn't want to have residentials facing the business street, but not permitted, period, is. That matches the other zones, I agree. I wasn't sure that was the case.
Yeah, I suppose here it's not as important, I think, because I mean, we do allow for single family detached.
Yeah,
Okay,
up
so-
at the top of residential, it's permitted. So I'm like, well, then,
Yeah, 'cause I got that circled on mine also.
Yeah, I completely see your point. I wonder, I have to check back to see if the two districts that were combining, maybe one of them had that.
Right.
So it may have been a carryover. But again, I think that's a good observation is considering the other types of residential uses, is that really a priority? And probably not.
It could almost be removed.
yeah, just consistency and what our goal is with that.
Dave, I think the intent statement, when I read through it from my comments, I thought was very well done. I did look at the proposed requirements for the commercial, the setbacks and the lot areas. It's right in line with what we all discussed in May as far as what we thought was kind of like the minimums that we'd want to set. So I thought that was good. On the uses, the only comments that I had that I'd like to at least have us discuss was, I think the hospitality, the restaurants being permitted outright. I don't know. So to me, it's like if somebody wants to put a restaurant potentially next to what somebody's got a single family home, they may want to have a discussion about it as opposed to it just being straight permit. I don't know if that's too much to think that it would be a special land use, but that was my thought because we do have some homes that would be in this district. The other one, CJ already mentioned, was the dwelling. And then the last one that I had a question on for us to discuss was on page 85. Underneath tourism and recreation, where it says indoor commercial recreation permitted. Since we're including swimming pools, tennis, racquetball, pickleball, I would think that before we'd ever allow somebody to put some of those in right next to a building, that should be a special, not a permitted. Because I think we'd want to look at it and make certain it fits with the character of the surrounding properties. So that was just my thought with that would be special, dwelling not needed, and restaurants potentially special.
I agree with all the comments.
Anyone else have other ideas?
Those are all good.
Makes sense.
Are you concerned at all that with the restaurants being special, that this absorbs multiple restaurants? This new map?
Oh, you mean as far as having them have to come before to get it?
Well, yeah, I know that it'll be a grandfathered use, but I mean, just looking at how far this district goes, it pretty much goes almost right up to Mason Street where Good Goods was, and you have the Mitten, you have Wicks Park, you have the outdoor kind of food court area.
I think it wouldn't, just because it's special, they'd be grandfathered in.
Yeah, yep, all those would be grandfathered in, but I guess just for,
But I guess would it be, if they were just changing the use,
or if,
stay in restaurant, you're asking what it's.
yeah, and I guess I'm looking at right next to Good Goods, you have two homes there, and if anything were to ever happen to those, would we want it to be automatically permissible that those could be restaurants or breweries or?
Well, today they could apply for it's a special land use. in
Okay.
Water
I
Street
don't think
East
it's strictly
District, so-
special.
Is it still, okay,
It's something where I just thought, instead of saying it's permitted, I think I'd like to see it come before.
Yeah, it's special.
Yeah.
okay.
And I realize it would also have to go before the historic commission, so I mean, it's.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm looking at Water Street East now. That makes sense. Okay.
And if you leave it special, if there's been a change in the intensity of use, that's gonna trigger a review by you. And
Right.
obviously a change in the site plan, then we have, minor and major questions, but if it's major, it becomes before you, so.
But the other things that were currently listed there, I thought were in aligned with what we had, or it made sense to us to break it out as new.
And a little bit of a question for all of you, because I wasn't here for the conversation, and so forgive me if I'm asking you something that you like beat to death already, but obviously there's some setback changes where it's kind of a 10-foot setback front lot line, whereas some uses can have 0 foot. So I was just kind of curious what the thought was on that, and I think it's a little curious that, I mean, it's a C2 commercial district, and I get that there's at least 1 or 2 single family dwellings and there's sensitivities to making something non-conforming, but would you really want somebody buying certain properties and saying, I just want to put a big single family dwelling there in your downtown commercial district? Is that really long term? Like I like what Dave's proposing as far as like increased density, as far as two families and multifamilies and encouraging that. And I think with the district and where it's at, that makes sense. But, you know, is single family something that you're interested in really being a use in that area long term?
That's what I'm concerned with, because I think when you look at least 2 blocks of this, I personally think it's indistinguishable from city center with how the use is now. And I think there has been some pushback in the community with certain buildings along Water Street that have been converted to single family use, and what's going to stop more getting absorbed into that. So I don't know if this is something that maybe we want to continue to punt, and maybe we can kind of see if we're feeling any different after looking
You
at.
can make single family dwellings a special land use, which means they'd have to come before.
It's true, but then I just worry because then we do cross over to an area where that makes more sense, kind of, you know, past Wicks Park and Ida Reds, and then you have all of the units at 717 Water Street and those units. So I worry, and I think it just goes back to this all happened before I got here, and maybe these districts are distinct. And I don't want to confuse it more.
Well, I think you make a good point. That's kind of how it probably ended up the way that it did, and that we have so many because there were a lot of these exact kind of debates and wrestling that went on.
Yeah.
That north end, 0, because they were 100% coverage in some of those, so it becomes, they're gonna feel aggrieved possibly.
Absolutely. And I don't know.
But I
it's
think
just-
the idea at our previous meetings was we didn't want to see anything that's along Water Street have a property line to property line
Right.
ability
That's
to
right.
develop.
That's
So
right.
so 10 foot became kind of the minimum, which was actually less than what we did on the waterfront preservation side. And the side setbacks are only 5 feet, which
Yeah.
I think originally we were all talking about more, but that's.
Yeah, I think I just look at, because I think there's one parcel I'm thinking of, right? No, it's not in this, never mind.
Do we know how many will become non-conforming? How many properties will become non-conforming with these setback changes? Dave?
No, I have not done a full analysis. I'd be happy to do what I can to take some measurements on aerials and to see if, you know, if there's anything that's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that many either, but there's a couple on the north.
Yeah, because on the north side, the apartment ones are already kind of blocked out. Mill Pond has setbacks on their property. The lot behind it's vacant.
Yeah, it's,
And then everything else from there down, I know already had the setbacks that met the previous standards, because it actually listed in the previous one, like Dave was talking about, if it was this type of business, you had setback requirements. And then then you had up to 100%. I can't remember.
yeah, that's why I don't know the number either. If it didn't have any big quantity that went to non-conforming, then it's a little bit easier push.
And I think that's something that we're going to have to answer during a public hearing as well, just to understand the, you know, the extent of the nonconformities that may result. But at the same time, also, we'll, I think we did this during the waterfront project, is be able to explain the nonconformity regulations. So, you know, we say that, well, even if a structure is non-conforming, it can still expand as long as it's expanding in a conforming manner. So I think between maybe just having a better understanding of the extent of the nonconformities that may result, and then just, you know, clearly explaining the nonconformity regulation at the hearing would be helpful.
Yeah, like boardwalks built out to the property line.
Yeah, a lot of them. I mean, French
And,
French
you know,
Connections, Well Times, Wicks Park probably is.
They sit, what, small times, the French, they sit 10 feet back from the sidewalk.
Swell Times, do they?
Yeah, there's that, because he sticks junk in front.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Right, because I get my,
What about like Rosenhuck, that one, right
that's
there?
10 feet back.
That's 10 feet back with the units on top, and then you had the one on the other side of Main Street, and then Mitten, and then the residential home there, and then Boardwalk.
Wicks is real.
I mean, Boardwalk sits back because they've got picnic tables.
Yeah,
The thing is,
I can't, I.
those were all in Water Street East. And they-
Yes.
And they had setback requirements. The only one that didn't have a setback requirement and allowed for 100% was Water Street North. So we've already had those properties in existence in Water Street East.
Water Street East is. Well, front setback in Water Street East is 0 feet.
Yeah,
Was it?
Yeah.
That's what I was just getting kind of.
essentially for all uses, it's 0, yeah, depending. Fact, the lot was different, but your front setback, yeah, was 0 feet for any use in that district.
In this.
It would be good to know the impact of how many go non-conforming.
And going back to the residential use, I do think it is something that we need to at least acknowledge that residential real estate is more valuable here than commercial real estate as far as money wise, because you can only get so much out of mom and pop businesses, and I think we do have to at least kind of go almost property by property and ask ourselves, would we be okay with someone buying this and converting to a residential home and something that is commercial in nature, at least a huge stretch of that is.
I agree. And I know Dave's put the work in, but there's nothing that says that it can't stay Water Street East and Water Street North and Water Street South. As Ryan pointed out before, it's a little confusing why you have so many zones, but somebody can say, oh, this is where I'm located. I'm in Water Street North, and you can just look at if we don't like the idea of 100% in that zone, or you want to clean that zone up, you can always propose just that zone. So it doesn't have to be creating a new zone.
Well, I mean, I think the idea of consolidation is there a significant or realistic difference between a property that is Water Street and Lucy Street and a property that is Water Street and Hoffman Street? I mean, I would generally say not a lot of difference. And so I don't know, it strikes me that we could do. I don't see why we're gonna just say, okay, well, throw all this out and let's keep Water Street North, South, East.
Oh, I didn't say that because my
Thought you
preference.
just-
I'm throwing it out there that I'm just giving everybody the options. We don't have, we can move forward in numerous different ways, but the idea of consolidating it, because I felt that everyone agreed that everything that went along Water Street should have similar type of characteristics, and there really wasn't a reason to distinguish between east and north, just like when we were creating the
Right.
waterfront. So
I do think there's a difference between Lucy and Hoffman though, if you walk down Water Street.
You go with your waterfront preservation district. We're kind of going towards one set of standards, and you said, nope.
I know,
It
yeah,
feels
we
different
changed that
when you
one.
get north of here and south of here, and so it's all one district, but you actually said, well, north of this street,
Right.
it's these dimensions, and south of this street, it's these dimensions. I would say from like administering this ordinance perspective, it's not any harder for staff. So because no matter what, whatever comes in, we're looking, well, what zoning district is it in? That's where we're starting, and then we're gonna go to that district and look at the standards and so whether I'm
Yes.
just know that it's one new district, that's not, I think I would suggest that what Dave's coming up with and starting to kind of look at as far as like updating some of your definitions and also looking at maybe some more housing density or different types of options for some of these districts makes a ton of sense.
Because what I like about creating a new one is that you are going through and you're creating the new definitions, you're creating what's allowed, what's not allowed, and what is special. And it makes it consistent without having to go and make changes to Water Street East, Water Street North, for those items. So to me, I still like the idea of a new district, but I do think we have to think seriously about what is permitted, not permitted, or special, I guess, when it comes to probably the one that's being discussed would be the single family dwelling. And if you do make it special, then it becomes kind of, what are the requirements? It makes us
Right.
say that they can do it, it's, we can't just say, well, we think it'd be better use to have a business there.
Exactly.
So it's easy to say, let's make it special, make them come before us, but then what standard do we set?
Well, and we're differentiating too between single family residents and multiple family residents, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the ones where it says, like the multifamily residents, I think most of us would agree would be something that would even not only be appropriate, but should be permitted. It just becomes that question of the single family.
Mm.
Um, At first, I wasn't thinking about it, but then when I think of some of the lots that could be redeveloped, and now that you're going to be guaranteeing them, there's some space between buildings and you always have some view.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the most improbable that somebody could say, I want to build on that,
Build or just buy for my own use too. I mean, but I think that's getting down to subjective and things that we should probably, suss out with citizenry, see what they're thinking about it. Cause I know that there have been feelings about certain establishments that they used to be businesses that are now private residences that are kind of smack dab in the middle of some of these areas.
If
That is
somebody were going to
interesting.
take a commercial building on Water Street, tear it down and build a private residence, doesn't that then trigger the setback requirements for private residence, not the setback requirements for this? 25 feet, for example, for front setback?
Well, you would set the dimensional standards for the district, so.
Oh, so it would be the 10 feet, not the 25 feet, because they're in this district.
right.
Okay.
Hmm.
I think Dave's trying to get you maybe, or suggesting that you move away from having like different dimensional standards for different types of uses like it currently exists, but you could choose to say, well, maybe we are fine with single family, but it would have to be these types of setbacks and only this much lot.
My train of thought was that would necessarily, if it were 25 feet, the size of these lots and the configuration of these lots, that would
I see.
basically prohibit somebody from building a private residence because they couldn't configure a house in these size of lots. Generally, you probably can find one, but generally, you couldn't tear down 12 times and put a house that sits 25 feet back, for example. I don't think it would fit. So, anyway.
Maybe they could, so I think that's what it might be.
As it stands today, somebody could, right, it's a 12 times could just simply become a single family dwelling and the existing structure and that's today. I mean, the ordinance today allows for that. I'm just throwing it out there,
I just picked
long
12
term
times
you're
out of
looking
my,
for, so.
you know where, so.
Yeah, good stuff. Get it.
Well, I don't know what this,
Yeah, where are we going?
I was going to say, like go home. No, I was going to say, is it also, we have to be consistent with what the goals of the city are.
Mhm.
In terms of, is it a goal of the city to support development of businesses? Or is it a goal of the city to provide multifamily residences, which there are hardly any, if any, today?
Right.
So I think that in making these decisions, we have to keep that in mind also.
Since we're going to be doing the survey and the public workshop, I'm just wondering, should this be, even though I know we put it on our priority for 2025, would this potentially be something we'd want to table, get the more of a public opinion during the
I
survey?
think that would be.
David, I think when you're talking about photos, if we could actually have photos of Water Street and then have photos of a business that is no longer there, but a single family home in there, and you can get people's reaction to, would they want to see that? I think that would help us in really trying to understanding, what's the citizens want. Since there really isn't any urgency, to this, I know we've already put time and work into it, but I could see it being tabled until after, or, even if it happened after after the master plan was done. Because part of the master plan may say we want to go back and relook and look at some of our zones as a goal from the master plan. So
And I would say, I think that makes a lot of sense in it says that zoning should be based on a plan, right? And so
Yep.
you want to make sure, that you're aligning.
Especially-
Where you want to head to, but some of the definitions, even through this process, right, that you're developing for just this district are probably gonna be pretty applicable to what you,
Correct.
updating other zoning districts and their uses, and that's kind of a larger zoning audit and update, project that really will need to occur.
correct. And I think we were trying to think about trying to do it in piecemeal, but maybe it's really best to kind of put it, if you're gonna do language changes and what's permitted, not permitted, look at the entire,
And
commercial
maybe that's a
area.
better goal than trying to consolidate the number of zones, because as he said, when they come in, we just go to which zone they're in. The fact that there's 29 or whatever the number is for such a small city is just a
Yeah,
fact.
my point, when we originally were talking about this, it was the inconsistency I saw between what's permitted and what's special and what's
Yeah.
not permitted in zones, because there's certain things that are not permitted in Water Street North that are permitted in Water Street East, but I look at them and I say there's really no difference. So it's not really the consolidation of the zone, it was the changing to the definitions and what's permitted and not permitted and what's special. I think that was kind of driving our initial thought behind this. But I do think that we could take some of this and incorporate it into that open house, and we'll get a lot of this from the survey, but definitely if we had actual, because we can do visuals like we did for the waterfront, but if we actually had photos that somehow we could enhance of what is already there, it makes it more real for somebody to kind of be able to look at it and say, which would we want? Give their opinion. Would you want to see, an apartment building, or would you want to see a single family home, on the space where, Mitten or something is right now? Anything, guys, we're in agreement?
Yeah.
Table this until we get past at least the open house and the survey?
Yes.
I'd agree with that. And to table, we don't need a vote or anything, do we?
You're just discussing, it's nothing
Well, it's discussion.
Just doesn't show up on old business anymore for a while.
We go.
Whoa.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, also if if you hold off on this for a month or two, and you wanted to just adjust the scope just to look at land uses, if you recall, a couple months ago, we did the analysis of all the 4 downtown districts with all of their land uses side by side, and did the comparison, and we could go and maybe standardize the land uses between the districts and tune up the uses and the definitions, and then just adjust land uses for permitted, not permitted, or special, just in each district, and then retain those districts. That would be maybe a more limited scope that would go toward maybe one of your original priorities.
Which again, I like that because I think it would be helpful for us to make certain that there's a reason why something's permitted in one and not permitted in the other.
Yeah, yep. So maybe that's a more limited scope that we could consider after this public involvement process, or maybe we wait up, until the master plan's over for everything. So we can maybe have that conversation in a few months.
I think that's a good idea. Great. Well, that takes us through the old business, which moves us to communications. I think the only communication I already referred to was regarding the public hearing on the McIntyre. Report of officers, and then our last public comment. I will open it up to anyone who is online or in the room if they'd like to make public comment, but since we don't have any participants, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, which then takes us to commissioner comments. We'll start on this side this time. Bob, anything?
Nothing good meeting. We see the new planning commissioner for our next meeting? He starts next week?
Yep, Grayson Moore starts September 2nd, so, yep, he's a master's in urban planning from Wayne State University, and has done kind of early in his career some consulting work with Carlisle Wortman, which is on the east side of the state. Did some code enforcement internship work for the city of Plymouth, so excited for him to join the team and references had great things to say. I appreciate Chair Mans and our Vice Chair of our Historic District Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals Chairman, and then the mayor joined me with interviews, and I appreciate their input as well.
Excellent.
Mark?
I will not be at the September meeting. But sure you'll do just fine.
Which continent are you?
I
going?
appreciate you letting us know. Good for you. Sorry.
Yes. Yes. Thanks.
No, good meetings, no comment.
No more?
Thanks.
No, and I was just saying, thanks for everybody for always being prepared, for the idea of being willing to table things and trying to make it administratively approval to be able to get the things approved we did tonight. I think it's good work on all behalf. And I was going to mention with Grayson coming in, I was going to thank Ryan because we had 8 solid candidates that we interviewed that day. And I would have to say that out of that, there's really 2 or 3 definitely stood out. And so I'm really pleased with the decision that has been made. I think with his background, he's kind of young, kind of like a Luke, but he's going to come in. He really wants to learn. And yeah, so I'm excited to work with him. I think that GIS skill and the fact that he's actually done consulting where he's helped multiple cities write up these type of site plans and special plan reviews. So I think that was a real positive. So Grayson, if you're watching this, we all welcome you. With that, I can call for adjournment if we have a
So
motion.
moved. We adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hit the gavel.
Buddy.
Thanks.
Gavel, Steve, gavel.